A game that occupies a setting centered around the war between France, Britain, and Germany was definitely something I tossed in the back burner. It's not rare, but I was wrong. This game won my heart just minutes into the gameplay, declaring itself a solid narrative and impressive original property. This is Valiant Hearts.
14. After the assassination of Prince Franz Ferdinand of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire declares war on Russia.
Valiant Hearts was released in 2014 by Ubisoft. Yes, the same team that brought us Assassin's Creed 1 through 15. Surprisingly, Ubisoft and the recently inspired indie movement, which is a topic of its own, has had a very solid fiscal year since the release of Child of Light, and they did not fall short with the Valiant Hearts. The story introduces a bit of history with the pencil and paper sketch art style. We know that Germany declared war with Russia and France loyally intervened. German civilians living in France needed to leave, and also this is where we are introduced to Karl, one of the many playable characters. This is followed by our introduction to Emil, another playable character in the game who is summoned to war and now who will be our first protagonist.
Had in store for him.
I would like to say that this game suggests a cinematic experience but is hungry for interaction. I think Valiant Hearts does a surprisingly great job with the marriage of the two. Load screen narrative and a great interlacing composition help keep the immersion alive and well. Now, usually World War I games get the tail end of popularity, but I think Valiant Hearts does something most First War games do not. Focus on narrative and less on the battle. Let's be honest, trench warfare was not the most exciting waiting game out there. Luckily, being the game was inspired by old war letters of one of the developer's relatives, the team had a general focus and second-hand experience into the war. The gameplay and controller scheme are pretty simplistic, which is never a bad thing, so handling the controls is as ecstatic as the feeling you get for passing a forgotten exam. You master a product you haven't spent much time with. You use your triggers to throw objects, which you pick up with X. Analog moves you along the 2D platform, and for Emil, L1 triggers an interaction between his dog and him. For a puzzle-based wargame, I don't think much else could have been added without seeing it as an attempt to shoehorn an item or mechanic. The story, being rich and full of wealthy information, is productively accompanied by a very minimal plot. I use the term minimal in the sense that we are not seeing diverging forks in the road, but rather a nice pacing story unfold as we progress. The tutorial is mandatory but doesn't interrupt the flow of game. I think they incorporated combat training and controller training the best they could. It could make sense that a private, we would need basic combat training. I know I wasn't turned off by that. The first level does a fine job impressing a difficult but manageable puzzle on you and introducing some of the few elements available at your disposal. Every so often, a carrier pigeon will deliver hints to you if you get stuck. They give you enough time to figure the puzzle out while not asserting itself as annoying. As you progress, the puzzles do get more difficult, but again, aren't something that you can't overcome. The more you play, the more you'll get it down. Every so often, you'll be able to find collectibles scattered across the levels and varying which character you are playing. I think this element can motivate a bit of exploration. What I was very charmed by was the attention to story the team strived for. Historical facts and diary entries add a lot of character to the game. Speaking of character, it's incredible how many are playable while all interlacing in some way. I can't stress enough how much I enjoyed the narrative. Its diversity is like 6 different sides that will always make the cube what it is, a dice. This game's separated story arcs complete what Valiant Hearts want it to be. It communicates to us that a game could be more than a KDR. The levels are dynamic, for training day, to nightly stealth missions, to driving a car. The game is everything but stale. Some games who attempt this out-of-the-box approach will sometimes feel a bit littered. Valiant Hearts understands that they introduced the game as a minimal controlled puzzle wargame and it sticks to just that. I do appreciate the driving sequence with Anna and the gang choreographing a dance around the German squadron's attempt to bomb them. I have a feeling Ubisoft has a soft spot for interactive music sequences. We have Rayman Legends music levels as well as the obvious Just Dance series. I also believe what makes the levels dynamic, aside from being a freehand puzzle game with a linear start and finish, is the few attempts to offer us other routes to get from A to B. Emil can dig routes out if he desires, as well as locations of the game that inspire a sense of rationalization. If I carry a bomb with me, even though I've used it already previously, can I find a secret room? Yes. Again, the game is fantastically illustrated, both narrative and art direction. The liberal linearity keeps the game fresh if interested in another playthrough, not to mention the collectibles market replay value. Interactive, dynamic levels escorted with an easy yet sound control scheme, I'd put Valiant Hearts at the top of my favorite indie games.